What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from Mtg. We like magic. Happy 2018 to you. First of all, we're going to start the year off right by looking at some official Rivals of Ixalan spoilers. Actual, real official spoilers started today. We got to see 11 different cards. So, at least so far today. So, let's go through these in ascending order from worst to first. So let's look at some commons first. And it was actually kind of tough to pick a worst card that I really wanted to start with here, so instead we'll just start with the card that I like the least. Here's Gleaming Barrier right here. It's a 2-mana artifact wall with Defender. It's a 0/4, and when it dies, you get a treasure token. Well, this doesn't look great or anything, but any deck in Sealed can play it. It's only 2 mana for a really decent blocker for a few turns to get you later on into the game so you can execute your plan. There are things I like about this in Sealed, and honestly, some of the budget treasure decks that I've been building recently, like, wouldn't mind a decent blocker on turn 2 to help them get like 2-3 turns later on in the game. Again, execute their plan. So I actually don't think that this is terrible, but, you know, it probably won't make the budget decks even, just because I think there are slots that take priority over it. And in Sealed, same thing. Like, I don't even know if this is really a 23rd card. Just because there's probably going to be a lot better cards in your pool that you can play. So I don't think it's terrible, but I think it's just a step away from playability is how I'd put it. Next thing I want to look at is Dusk Charger. This is 4 mana, 3 and a black for a 3/3 horse with Ascend. If you control 10 or more permanents, you get the City's Blessing for the rest of the game, and the Charger gets +2/+2 as long as you have the City's Blessing. First of all, let me address this. There are a lot of people asking how Ascend works on permanents, creatures, and enchantments and stuff. Basically, the game is always checking for whether or not you have Ascend, so it's not when this enters the battlefield it checks for Ascend. I mean, it will, technically, but the entire time it's on the battlefield, it's essentially checking for whether or not you have Ascend. So the moment you hit 10 permanents, you get the City's Blessing, and if you go under 10 permanents at any point, you still have the City's Blessing. So you're looking at a 4 mana 5/5 sometimes. That's not terrible, and it's a horse. You'll look out for that, you know, Crested Sunmare deck. Black-white Crested Sunmare, ladies and gentlemen. This is obviously not great. But, again, in Sealed, where chances are you're going to get into a board stall and Ascend is going to be a very relevant ability, this is probably not bad. 4 mana 5/5s are typically pretty great in Sealed, and maybe even limited if you're trying to build towards the Ascend deck specifically. But if you're building Ascend and Constructed, there are hopefully a lot better things you can do with the mechanic than this. Up next is Frilled Death Spitter. This is 3 mana, 2 and a red for a 3/2 dinosaur with Enrage. Whenever it's dealt damage, it deals 2 damage to target opponent. Almost nailed this one, actually, in the Cards I Want to See video, except my guy costs 2 mana, and that's a deal breaker, man. Like this is obviously a common. It's probably not going to see any real standard play. I mean, I would definitely put that out of my mind as far as this card is concerned, but in Sealed and in Draft, this probably seems pretty good. I mean, 3 mana, 3 power guy that even if it's blocked, it's going to hit for 2, it's going to shock the opponent. It's not bad, you know, it's like Suncrown Hunters, but smaller. That's cool, too. I like a lot about this card, and it seems pretty sweet in a limited environment, whether it's, again, Sealed or Draft. You know, you're building a really aggressive mono-red deck. This looks really good in Draft, but aside from that, I don't think it breaks through into Constructed play. It doesn't look that good, unless, you know, I think that you probably want to play On-Crop Crasher a lot more than you want to play something like this. And if it had haste, that would be insane. But, you know, 3 mana, 3 power guy that always deals some amount of damage, unless it's like immediately spot removed. And even then, like Shock, Lightning Strike, Harness Lightning, all those will, you know, they'll trade getting hit to the face for 2 damage for removing this. So actually, the more I'm talking myself into it, but I still don't think that it's better than a lot of the 3-drops that aggro already plays. But if you're building an aggressive deck in Limited, yeah, I'd say this definitely goes in. Up next is Swaggering Corsair. I love that name. It's 3 mana, 2 and a red for a 2/2 human pirate with Raid, and when it enters the battlefield, it gets a +1/+1 counter if you attack with a creature this turn. This is yet another super hot pull if you're building an aggressive limited deck, you know? It looks like this limited is speeding up just a little bit with just like the last couple of cards that we've looked at. You know, Ixalan Sealed and Ixalan, well, especially Ixalan Sealed, but Ixalan Draft are known, it's kind of a boring format. You know, there's not a whole lot of dynamic aspects to it. So I think that them giving us, you know, 2 common really, really aggressive red pieces that are splashable, it's a step in the right direction. Let me just say that. And if you're trying to build a Pirates deck in Sealed or Draft, then this is a great pick too, at the common rarity. So, big fan of this and the dinosaur for that matter. Now, I'm a little bit surprised that this is my favorite comment of the day, but so be it. This is Secrets of the Golden City. That SGC, let's just call it that, because Secrets of the Golden City is not the best name. It's 3 mana, 1 and 2 blue. For a sorcery with Ascend, you draw 2 cards, and if you have the City's Blessing, you draw 3 cards instead. Alright, so here's my reasoning on why I think this is good. Like, Divination is already a great card in Sealed, and even Draft, depending on what deck you're building. So, I think that 3 mana to draw 2 cards is already fine. Yeah, your deck has to be pretty heavy blue, which, depending on how good blue is in, Rivals Sealed, this card could dip in quality. But, just on its face, a 3 mana draw 2 cards is good. And with the ability to, in board stalls or in the very late game, draw 3 cards for 3, that is very, very good. And almost possibly standard playable in the right deck. Although, I don't think that any deck where you're really, really heavy on blue is going to be able to get a bunch of permanents into play. Unless you're building the control deck that just tries to get, 8 lands, a planeswalker, and an artifact into play. Just a very, very late game Ascend plan. But even then, I think sorcery speed may not be where you want to be. But 3 mana for 3 cards is a great deal. And honestly, 3 mana for 2 cards isn't the worst deal ever. Probably not constructed playable good, but in Sealed and Limited, Draft, this is probably a fantastic card in a lot of games, especially in Sealed. Now we're going to jump from common to rare here. The next 2 cards I want to look at aren't necessarily great, but I do think they occupy a really interesting design space and they're fun cards to think about. So let's go ahead and take a look at Awakened Amalgamation right here. It's 4 mana for an artifact creature. It's a golem, and its power and toughness are equal to the number of lands you control with different names. Now, not everyone thinks that this card is bad. Full disclosure, there are some people that are pretty excited about this card, but ultimately, end of the day, I think that it's a 4 mana vanilla creature. And even if it's, a 6/6 somehow when you play it, it's probably still not, incredible, just for contrast, we had Woodland Wanderer for a while, a little while back, just rotated. But a little while back, we had Woodland Wanderer, and now we have, Ramanap Hydra? But that's another good example. Both of these are 4 mana guys that can get to, Woodland Wanderer gets a 6/6, possibly, and Ramanap Hydra gets a 5/5, and they both have, abilities and stuff, and still, they don't see play. Woodland Wanderer saw extremely sparing play. So, this, as a possible 4 mana 6/6 or 7/7, that does literally nothing other than be a big fat dude, I don't think that is constructed playable. In maybe EDH, a 4 or 5 color EDH deck that, they play one of each basic land and then a bunch of other lands. Maybe, but even if you can get this down as a 10/10 for 4 mana, it takes freaking forever in a lot of decks to do that. So I don't know. There are things that can combo with it even in standard, Harvest Season is a good example. But even Harvest Season, I think, only goes and gets basics. So you just go and get 4 or 5 different basic lands and give this a hefty boost. But I just don't think it's worth planning an entire mana base and an entire main deck around a vanilla creature. I don't think that's probably a trap. So I'm not too sure about it, is all I'm saying. Now, as I said before, this next card is also probably bad, but it's just so fun to think about, and I love the design of it. So, get a load of Form of the Dinosaur right here. It's 6 mana, that's 4 and 2 red for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, your life total becomes 15. At the beginning of your upkeep, Form of the Dinosaur deals 15 damage to target creature an opponent controls, and that creature deals damage equal to its power to you. What a fun card. It's such a neat card, and it's very probably a bulk rare, but there's so many cool things about it. This is essentially red life gain. You don't see that every day, or maybe ever. Somebody correct me in the comment section, but I don't know that we've ever actually seen red life gain that was only red. Lightning Helix, War Leader's Helix, all that. Taminoa, I guess, if you want to put it that way. But Taminoa, by the way, really, really hilarious combo with this, just so you know. Keep that on the screen in case you haven't read it yet. But in any case, I still think this is probably bulk, but it's just so neat. I mean, there's some pros. I look at it like a sort of a drop of honey that costs a lot of mana and can kill you. That's the major downside to this. This card could kill you, and cards that can kill you are usually not great. There are some things that make me wonder, though. I don't know if you've heard of the 6-drop tribal deck. that Saffron Olive is the big champion of right now. He tried it out for a little while, but it's basically just a bunch of 6-drops and Sunbird's Invocation. And this looks really hot to hit with Sunbird's Invocation, you know? Reset your life total, and honestly, against, like, aggressive decks, if you can actually get to this, or if you can cheat it into play somehow, then it resets your life total. You know, if you were at 3, then it puts you back at 15, and it allows you to kill maybe 2-3 creatures over the course of a game. You know, if this becomes a 2 or 3 for 1, then it was probably worth playing, and combined with like life gain effects and stuff, maybe. But 6 mana is so much. Like 6 mana is so unrealistically much, I would say. So I just don't think the card really has a chance, but it is one of the more interesting cards that I've seen in a really long time. There's some things to get hype about with it, you know. I think it's definitely neat enough to talk a lot about and maybe even brew around, but end of the day, I think the card is probably destined for the bargain bin. Let's go back down to the uncommon rarity here to look at this next card. This is Enter the Unknown. This is a really intriguing card here. It's a green mana for a sorcery. Target creature you control explores. You may play an additional land this turn. Alright, first of all, shout out to the guy on Mythic Spoiler that was like, hey Deb, you got part of your wish. Like, yeah, in the cards I want to see in Rivals video. This wasn't exactly what I came up with for Explore, but I did mention that I'd like it if there was just a card that was 1 green mana, target creature explores. And for this, we got so much more. There's a lot to talk about with this little thing. First things first, you have to have a creature to cast it in the first place. It has to have a legal target in order to be cast, period. I've seen a lot of confusion about that. You know, you don't get to just cast it with no creatures and you get to play an extra land. It doesn't work like that. Have to have a legal target. But there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with that just in standard, if not even modern, by the way. The ability to play an extra land on a given turn is historically very, very powerful. But usually it's most powerful on, you know, cards that you can keep doing it with, like Explore, or Exploration, for instance, and Fast Bond and stuff. So I'm not sure that just, you know, play an additional land this turn for 1 green mana is entirely great, but, you know, on the other hand, on turn 2, if you got a 1-drop, either turn 1 or that turn, on turn 2, you could get to play an additional land and get an extra counter on the creature, or maybe, you know, rip a land off the top of your library so you get a better draw next turn. There's a lot to like about this card on turn 2 or turn 3 even. And yeah, people have been saying you get it on turn 1 in standard with Ornithopter, but then you have to play Ornithopter. I'm just not totally sure that it's worth the ramp on turn 1, although it's just about the only way in standard that will ever get ramp on turn 1. This looks probably decent in like a mono green stompy deck where it looks like it goes really well with old growth Dryads. You know, if you get Dryads on turn 1 and then this on turn 2, you can essentially negate any downside that Dryads had and even possibly have a 4/4 Dryad. That seems very nice. So maybe in a mono green stompy deck that's looking to keep its curve really, really low, this would be nice, you know, and it would theoretically lower your land count too, a lot like a card like a Tomb with Ether does. So I think there's an awful lot of upside to this. I think it might be one of the better uncommons that we see in this set. Of course, we haven't seen much of this set, but this looks like a pretty powerful uncommon. The question is, does every deck that looks like it could play this have the slots for it, or does it really want to play it? Like a deck like blue-green merfolk, for instance, looks like it might want this card. It's really, really low on the curve. That deck plays a few more spells than a lot of aggro decks do. But at the same time, the deck also wants to play Blossoming Defense. It wants to play Chart a Course. Sometimes that deck plays things like Opt or even Dive Down as extra copies of Blossoming Defense, essentially. So at the end of the day, are you going to have slots for a card like this in a deck like that? We're definitely going to try and see. You know, we're going to answer that question through testing this card out. I'm really, really excited to get into the lab with this thing, because this could either be an uncommon that's not really that big of a deal in any format, or it could be a super, super powerful uncommon that could see multi-format play. It all depends on how things shake out in the lab, so I'm really, really excited to see exactly how good this thing is, but just initial impressions, I'm trending towards pretty darn good. Next thing I want to look at is Tendershoor Dryad. I'm pretty excited about this card too, but I'm trying to be objective. There's definitely things I don't like about it, but honestly, let me just read the card to you. It's 5 mana, 4 and a green for a 2/2 Dryad with Ascend. At the beginning of each upkeep, a very important word there, at the beginning of each upkeep, create a 1/1 green Saproling creature token. Saprolings you control get +2/+2 as long as you have the City's Blessing. Now, I am inclined to really, really like this thing. I've already pointed this out, but I feel like I'll point it out one more time just in case you didn't really catch it there. This is each upkeep. It's not just your upkeep. So when you play this and say go, you'll get a sapperling, provided that it lives through the end of your turn. As soon as they untap and hit their upkeep step, you get an extra point of power out of it and another creature immediately, give or take. So that seems pretty good to me. It can be shocked or magma sprayed, and I don't really like that about it, but hey, you just Godfrow's gifted back into play, or like Scarab got it back into play, and then it's even bigger, and it's still creating sapperlings every single upkeep for you, you know. I just really like that it's each upkeep, and it helps you get the city's blessing. You know, I talked about this with the horse, but this is a permanent. It's always checking for whether or not you have a sin. So as soon as you hit that 10th permanent, all the sapperlings you've created with it will become 3/3s, and each sapperling it creates after that is a 3/3. That is no joke. A thing that creates, you know, essentially 2 3/3s every turn cycle for you is really good, and that's worth, I think, 5 splashable mana, even though it's only 2/2. You're not going to often be attacking with this, so unless they have a form of, you know, damage-based removal, it's going to be tough to take care of, you know. They can't even Fatal Push this. Even if they revolt the Fatal Push, I think that's worth mentioning too. So I really like this. If it sticks around, it really it snowballs out of control very quickly, I would imagine. You know, this is essentially a smaller Verdant Force that costs less, and I think that's really awesome to have in Standard right now. I'm a big fan of this, but again, trying to be objective because it's so removable. But, you know, if your opponent's not packing red-based removal, then it's going to be a lot harder for them to deal with, and it's just going to, you know, every turn it's allowed to live, and every turn that you're allowed to live, then it'll create more and more sapperlings, and eventually they'll all get huge. So, I mean, you don't even actually have to have anything else in the deck to trigger a sin. This will trigger a sin by itself in just a couple of turns. So, I really like the cut of this thing's jib. I think it could be a lot more powerful than some people are initially giving it credit for. The thing looks awesome. Now, that was essentially the number 3 card of the day, so let's look at number 2 here. This is Kumena, Tyrant over Razka. It's 3 mana, 1 a green and a blue for a 2/4 legendary merfolk shaman. Tap another untapped merfolk you control. Kumena can't be blocked this turn. Tap 3 untapped merfolk you control, draw a card. Tap 5 untapped merfolk you control to put a +1/+1 counter on each merfolk you control. Now, this is great. This is great to me, at least. You know, a lot of people are underwhelmed by this, but I don't see why. I think they're really overlooking some of the better things about this card. This thing has 3 different activated abilities on it, and 2 of them it can tap itself for. If you don't think that second ability is good, then you've somehow already forgotten Crypt Breaker. And yeah, I know Crypt Breaker costs 1, and it sort of fueled its own ability to draw cards, but I still think this is freaking phenomenal, especially if you're in the Deep Root Waters plan or any plan that really creates a lot of merfolk. And even if you're not in that plan and you just have, you know, 24 to 26 merfolk in your deck, this can draw you, you know, a card every turn starting relatively early, like in the mid-game, end of your opponent's turn, draw a card every turn from then on out. And same thing with, you know, tapping 5 merfolk you control. First of all, you can tap it. I'll point that out too. But if you just tap 4 other merfolk you control, there are tricks with that. You can do it at the end of your opponent's turn and give everything, including Kumena, a +1/+1 counter. EOT, that seems great. Doing that every single turn will break a stalemate really fast. And you can also block. You can block with your guys and then tap them to get them bigger. That's a serious threat. All of these abilities are instant speed. That's insane. And the card has the ability to make itself bigger over the course of a couple of turns and then make itself unblockable. That's insane. Like, this card looks pretty good for just 3 mana to me. And honestly, a 3 mana 2/4 ain't half bad to begin with. You know, it's above Lightning Strike. It's above a Braid. I like that. You have to revolt a Fatal Push to kill it because it's 3 mana. There's a lot of things that I like about this card. I don't think it single-handedly makes Merfolk playable, but I like this card a whole heck of a lot more than a lot of people so far from the reactions I've seen to it. I think this is a bit of a ray of hope for Merfolk players. I think it's exactly what we needed. For 3 mana, it's a lot better than the last 3 mana legendary Merfolk, I think, and it goes pretty well with it, for that matter. So I'm really excited to try this one out too. I think that Merfolk still needs a couple of important pieces, especially at like 1 and 2 mana. We did get Silvergill Adept. That's looking good, but we still need some really, really efficient creatures to make this deck actually work, but I think this is really a step in the right direction. This just does so much that we want in an aggro deck, you know? It keeps filling our hand when we run out of cards. That's amazing. It makes all of our dudes bigger. That's amazing. All these abilities are instant speed. It creates an unblockable... Come on, like, what do you want? My question is, what do you want? Hexproof is probably what you wanted. Me too, but we're not going to get it. That's fine. We've got Blossoming Defense. We got Dive Down. We got plenty of defenses for this card. The card's looking pretty jammed to me. But that means we made it to my favorite card of the day, and I was pretty hyped about that last one, so you can only imagine how I feel about Journey to Eternity. I like that it kind of rhymes with itself. Journey to Eternity is 3 mana, 1 a green and a black for a legendary aura. Enchant a creature you control. When enchanted creature dies, return it to the battlefield under your control, then return Journey to Eternity to the battlefield transformed under your control. Now, it transforms into ATZAL, Cave of Eternity. It's a legendary land that taps for 1 mana of any color. That's dope. And you can pay 3, a black, and a green. That's 5 mana, and tap it to return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Now, the first couple of times I read this card, I didn't get that it worked essentially like, what is it, False Demise? I think it's a card from like Alliances. I'll find it. It's right there on your screen. But I didn't realize that this actually put the creature right back into play whenever it died. That's pretty sweet right there. So you do get a little bit of value just for putting this enchantment on a creature in the first place. But when the creature dies, I mean, things go absolutely nuts. You get the creature back, you get whatever ETB triggers back again. That seems pretty sweet. The creature comes right back into play. That's amazing. And you get ramp out of it. You get a land that taps for any color mana. That's great. And you get a land that essentially brings back whatever creature you want to every single turn. Like, there's just so much to like about this card. And I definitely think that it's worth slotting into something, especially if you have creatures that can sacrifice themselves for little or no mana. You know, like we just saw the, Thrashing Brontodon, I think it was called. You can pay 1 and sack it to disenchant, essentially. Kill an artifact or enchantment. That seems like it would go really well. You know, slap this on there, just disenchant something, you get it right back, threaten to disenchant something again, and you flip the land. It's just, come on. I mean, like, during the break between takes there, I was trying to think of, like, what are some cons? I'm trying to be as, like, objective as possible. I always do. And I guess, like, maybe it's not worth slots, but it probably is. Like, in any deck where you're playing more than... I guess that's a con. You got to be playing, like, 16 to 20 creatures, probably. Maybe 12 to 20 creatures to reliably make this work. But I just don't think that I just can't think of too much. I can't think of too much that I really don't like about this card, other than the fact that, like, you have to have a creature to play it on. How hard is that? You know what I mean? Like, how many different sacrifice outlets are there in the format? How many different creatures are there that can just sacrifice themselves? There's at least a couple, you know? So I don't see downside to this. And pretty much any deck where you can fit it and get it onto a creature that you know is going to die, it's probably worth playing in. Just look at all the long game value that you get out of this. And you get short game value out of it too. You get your creature back and you get some ramp too. And you fix your mana like immediately. All of this immediately. So the card looks bang up crazy to me. I don't know. Maybe, like, fix my face in the comments section. Let me know where I'm wrong here. But I just don't see too many things wrong with this card. Card looks ridiculous. Hey, Igby's here. You don't see him every day. Spoke too soon, everybody. Right as I started editing, Wizards decided to upload another card, and it's insane. So I should probably go ahead and talk about it. Get a load of this stupid thing right here. This is Zetalpa Primal Dawn. It's 8 mana, 6 and 2 white for a legendary elder dinosaur. That's a 4/8 with flying, double strike, vigilance, trample, and indestructible. Jeez. Hello, Akroma, dinosaur Akroma thing. It's so weird. Like, this is a heck of a card to wait until later on in the day to spoil. Like, this thing is so hype. Talk about a ramp target or a reanimation target. I mean, look at the last card. It just reanimates whatever you want, puts it straight on the battlefield. Perhaps, this is freaking crazy, you know. Hopefully Reanimator's a thing again. Yeah, we got Godfarer's Gift, and by the way, this is a heck of a card for the already blue-white Godfarer's Gift deck, you know. And it doesn't really lose much from being Godfarer's Gifted into play. You know, you lose the 4 toughness, yeah, but you gain haste, and gaining haste on something like this is unbelievable. Like this, I'm pretty hyped about this. I've only known about the card's existence for like 3 minutes at this point, but I can already tell you, this is probably going to see play somewhere. This looks pretty good in EDH, yeah, but, like, as a commander, that'd be something fun at least. But, like, imagine hitting this off of Gishath. Oh, my God. Like, there's so many cool things you could do with this card. Hit it off Gishath, ramp it into play, reanimate it into play, whatever you got to do. This is going to be a fun card to mess around with, so... I mean, I guess I really don't have much else to say about it. It's just a big, dumb 8-mana flying beat stick with indestructible and a bunch of other abilities. Doesn't even tap to attack. It's just... Oh, you guys. Like, this is a good card. We've been waiting for, like, an Ulamog level target like this, card like this. And it's definitely not on the level of Ulamog, but it's as close as we've seen since that card rotated. I mean, we've had some pretty substandard stuff. Like, I think Razaketh is probably our best reanimation target, ramp target, or whatever in the format right now. But this just blows past every other option that we have right now. I love this thing. You should also like the video if you liked the video, and you did. Let's be honest, you liked the video. So make sure you hit thumbs up. I hope you did. I put a lot of work into these, so hit thumbs up. You can also follow me on Twitter at SBMTGDev. You should sub to the channel if you haven't done that yet, because it's officially spoiler season. You're going to want to know when these videos come out. I mean, it's a big deal, sort of. So sub, hit the bell for the notifications. And if you want to, you can throw me $1 on patreon.com/SBMTG to help keep the lights on, keep the deck techs coming, because the deck techs are not actually that far away. Spoiler season's only like a week this time around, so we're going to be hitting the lab hard, trying to get some decks out for you in just the next couple of weeks, really. So make sure you sub for all that stuff, too. You can also check out TCGplayer.com. They're the cheapest place you can get Magic cards on the interwebs that I've seen anyway. They help sponsor my content. I'll leave you a link down there so you can get Rivals of Ixalan boxes on pre-order for only like $92, $93 right now. It's a hell of a deal. So check out TCG Player. Hit the link. It helps the channel when you do so. And I will catch you cats later. I'm Dev from The Place. Thanks for watching, my wizards. Spread love. Be kind.